Um, Hello, my name is Pratyush. Firstly, I would like to congratulate you guys on um, getting a close to perfect score on your math and English section. And I would like to congratulate Kavi and Joey for getting a perfect score on your math section, and Dhanya on getting a close to perfect score in her verbal and math section both. So, yeah, yeah. So I would, without any further doubts, I'll just proceed with the questions. Yeah, so I'll start with the math section, okay? So in case I want to evaluate graphs which are hard to comprehend, like which contain exponential functions and quadratic functions. So like, is there any possible way which can help me to sort out the graph in a very easier manner?
I think you can just write the equations in the Desmos calculator and just get the answers. I mean, you don't have to solve the equations as such. That's what I did.
So let's say like we have this word problem in like a question, and they're telling us to find a particular speed at the x coordinate, and frame the equation in a different manner. They're telling us to do it. I think you must have seen that type of a question in Khan Academy, I guess. So like, in that case, how do I evaluate the equation?
Like what I did was that I eliminated the options which I knew for sure were wrong. Like for example, the one that you just said, that the speed equations. You know that the unit of speed is meter per second, right?
Yes.
So you can just make out that if the answer is coming in meters, so you
Yep.
just know for sure that that's not the answer. So I
Okay.
did that for the equations as well.
Okay, good. So my second question would be like, there are like many easier methods to evaluate word problems. So what do you have any recommendations regarding this question?
I think the easiest method, at least for me, was just to make an equation and just put it into the graphing calculator because that saves a lot of time instead of trying to solve it by yourself. And getting a pen and paper is useful in a lot of cases, but because Desmos only allows two variables, x and y.
I
For others,
mean,
you have to adjust a value.
yeah, but I
Right.
mean like
So when you have
framing
more
an
than two
equation,
variables, you should really use a pen and paper. So don't waste time trying to
but
graph such
framing
questions.
a equation in a word problem which contains a quadratic equation, it's quite tough in certain cases, if you know.
Right. So then you can just try to work it out on paper because quadratic, what I know quadratics, a lot of them have extra variables other than
Yeah.
your x and y ones. So that is when you have to use paper. That is why when you can't do it on Desmos. So you should know when to use Desmos and when to use paper.
Yeah. And my third question is gonna be like, do you have any tips or tricks to evaluate statistical questions?
Most of the time, the numbers given for statistic questions are pretty big or like in decimals or something like that.
Yeah.
So my advice would be just plug it into the calculator, even if it's just like 1,000 plus 100 or whatever. Just
Yeah.
plug it into the calculator and have one that you can use on hand rather than the Desmos one because it makes calculations faster.
Okay. So like you're saying basically a normal calculator is required to evaluate problems regarding
Yeah, so
statistical.
I mean, for the quadratic equations, you can use the one which is online
Okay.
because you're not allowed to have
Yeah,
um,
yeah,
like a graphic calculator.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. Um, so I'll proceed with the verbal questions. How did you cope up with your mistakes you made in your practice test and for certain topics, like for transitions or like for any topic which you were struggling with?
For me, what I did was after I gave the practice test, I made sure to go through all of the questions, even the ones I got right and wrong. And I read through all of the reasoning for all of the options and not just the correct ones. And so it helped me identify not only the type of question it was, but also what I did wrong. And it helped me improve my verbal scores. And I could see the scores while I was giving my practice tests.
Okay. So my second question is gonna be for verbal only. Um, So like if I'm struggling with a certain topic in practice test or facing difficulty while attempting questions which are given, how do I eliminate the obvious choices and choose the answer with 70 to 80% assurance?
Yes.
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah.
Yeah, so if I'm struggling with a particular question and if I want to eliminate two or three choices, let's say two choices, and if I'm like left with two choices, okay, after eliminating two of them, so how do I choose my answer with 70 to 80% assurance? Like,
First, I really think you should, if you have guessed before, then you
yeah,
should continue guessing the same option. You shouldn't just go random, like this time I'll do C, next time I'll do D. You should avoid doing such thing. You should continue guessing the similar option if you have guessed before. If you haven't, I really think that when you're eliminating two options, you should, like for example, if you have comma splices questions, there's going to be one which in which you obviously know this comma splice is not correct. That it is
yes,
if the answer gives in a comma splice. So you should look for that. And yeah, a lot of these questions, the ones you can easily eliminate two options are the ones which have like transitions and or maybe the standard English conventions. Those are the ones which you can easily eliminate two. Others, I doubt you can eliminate as many because passage questions, you really have to read the passage. You can't eliminate them easily.
okay. And I guess my third question is gonna be for SAT, they have 4 to 5 advanced level questions from reading and writing both. So how to tackle those questions without any assistance or without any, error, any problem? So like, at times we get, while reading the passage, we get zoomed out, like we get zoned out. We can't comprehend the whole passage. It's tough to comprehend the passage at times, and especially when you're reading the questions with quotation marks, where you have like two quotation marks and you're supposed to, um, as in
You
like you're
mean like the
supposed to,
inference based ones, right? Like
yeah,
what does the
inference based
quote
ones,
mean,
yeah,
or what the
yeah, whether it
author
is
tries to
supporting
say?
whether it is supporting the claim or not, yeah,
Yeah, but
those
I
questions.
think this problem is only for the paper pen based SAT, because for the digital one you have like really short passages.
Yeah,
So
but
like,
even they have like certain claims, right,
yeah.
towards the left side. So
The claim questions, I think you can really there's the two. I think the claims in which the one where two passages and asking if this will support the claim as well, or the other author will support the claim. In such cases, you really have to read what the get the essence of whatever passage they're asking for. Shouldn't really hop around a bit, because if you focus only on the quote, there's a lot of cases where people focus only on the quote itself, the quoted part, and ignore the rest of the passage while they're trying to answer such questions,
but
which
like the
which can't
claim
really.
is like they claim the whole thing in 2 to 3 lines only. So like let's say the
Right, so
question,
your entire passage is around six to seven lines, right?
no, like they have a claim like a 3 liner question in which in like the second and the third line they make a claim, and in the quotation marks we're supposed to support that claim.
Also, like which excerpt from this person's interviews, that's questions.
Yes, yes.
Such questions you just have to read what the quotations from the interviews are, and you have to get the point of the options. I don't think you can really do much. In such cases, you can actually sometimes you can avoid reading the passage itself if you get the main claim in the question and you get the quotation as well.
Okay.
And I also think like the main claims should be highlighted properly in the text, like nowhere beating around the bush or something like that, because there are a lot of options which beat around the bush, and those are they might seem correct, but they're actually not.
Okay, that does make sense actually. So in like certain cases, like for the inference based questions, so like do you guys know how to eliminate a specific choice? Because firstly it could be contradiction, secondly it could be some out of context thing. So like if you're left with two choices which support the claim and the second one doesn't support the claim, but it is true in terms of like the whole passage, so how do I differentiate between them?
I if you know which one is the supporting one, like which one is
Yeah.
completely true and to the point one, you should always select that. You should never go for the one which is true but not exactly what you're asking. That's a lot of such questions are there where there's two options which are correct, but one is the one that is accurate to your questions. Even in school exams, you have questions like choose the most accurate option. You shouldn't
Yeah.
choose everything that's correct. So that's the main thing. I'll
Yeah,
let someone
because
else
like
speak.
15 to 20% of the questions are based on like those type of questions, etc. And do you have any tips regarding transition questions?
I think your trainer would have given you the list of transitions used in cases as well, right?
Yeah.
Like moreover is used when you're adding things or
Yeah.
as well as and things like that. So you should know all of them. You should know what context they're used in.
Hmm.
And along with them, you should know the uses of semicolons and commas and
Yeah.
while transitions. I think those are the two main things you need to do while doing transition questions.
And let's say like you're given a transition based question and you don't, and like there are four options. And out of those four options, you don't know this word is a contradiction, this word is a this word is emphasizing a particular information, and you're left with two options. So like how do I differentiate between them?
I think you should not like read the options first, because I personally didn't do that.
Okay.
I just like read the sentences and like
Hmm.
made up my own words which I thought would be
Hmm.
correct, and then I matched those options, because you read the options and you feel like all of them are like correct in the blanks that they should be there, right? So I don't think that you should read the options first. I think you should connect the sentences in your own way and then place them.
Okay, in case you're not able to elaborate what the whole passage is about and what the whole thing is about, like you're not getting whether it is contradiction or whether it is emphasizing a particular information or whether it is adding adding additional information. So like, and you're given options which have multiple meanings, like one would be contradiction, other would be emphasizing, and the third one would be adding a particular information, the fourth one would be continuation or sequencing. So how do I manage to get through that question?
I think you should try to plug in each of the words. If you know their purpose, you should try to plug in each of the words in the passage and just say it out loud. So if it makes sense and you feel as if that's the right answer, you should go with that.
Okay. Yeah. And in any case, if I want to get a perfect score in the writing part, basically you can't differentiate between them, but like the questions regarding the writing part, so how do I get that score? How do I manage to get that score? From Marcus.
I guess it's more of just analysis of what mistakes you commonly make in writing. Even I didn't get close to a perfect score in English, so I can't really help you that much with that. But you can really try analysis. You can focus more on the. Right now, you don't. For people given in October, they don't have much time. But later on, you still have time to focus on what exactly you're missing in your answers. So you can really do it. As she had mentioned, as Tanya mentioned before, you can go to Khan Academy and read all of the options. I know a lot of people who just read what the explanation for the correct answer was and not read why the others were actually wrong, which can cause your downfall in some questions, because that might be the reason. What if it comes in the SAT for the same reason and you misjudge it?
But like, as you know, like I think you all must have studied from Khan Academy too. Many questions in English are repetitive, like they ask the same question again and again. So like we all know there is not enough of a material, we don't have enough material for digital sat. So do you guys know any book, or do you guys know you know any extra material which could help me to get a better score in my English section?
I solved like the paper pen based SAT questions because they were, I thought, much harder than the digital SAT ones.
Yeah, obviously.
So it came out as kind of an advantage for me because I could attempt these ones pretty easily.
Yeah.
So I think you can use them. But then there's also the problem of time management and all,
Exactly.
which comes which is
For
a problem for the
for reading, right? For the first
yeah,
one.
for reading.
Okay.
So I think I just solved whatever FACT had provided, like the digital SAT papers that they have on PI. And yeah, Khan Academy. That's it.
And can you guys recommend any books by any chance if you know?
I mean, I use Princeton Review, but that I also presume is like the paper pen.
Yeah,
Act.
Princeton Review, it is regarding the SAT, which was before, like,
But
yeah.
those questions I believe are good for practice. And apart from that, I don't know any others.
Okay. And do you guys like know any book for math? Or is it Princeton only?
I did Barron's for math. I think my trainer gave me the Barron's book, so I just did that along with his lectures. So that was pretty much enough. Math is not very difficult for a lot
Yes,
of people.
indeed. But even in math, there are 3-4 questions which are actually tough to solve if you know what I'm saying.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
I know. In some of the practice tests, there have been questions
Yeah,
which
and
I couldn't solve. And so my main thing in that is do not like when in your first attempt, while just skim through those questions if you know that this one looks difficult. Don't waste a lot of time trying to solve that, because if you waste 5 to 10 minutes on that, you won't have any time for the rest of the questions.
right.
So skim through that question, mark through review, finish everything, and then come to that. Do not waste time on the harder ones.
Okay. And I guess you must be knowing this since you got a perfect score in math. Section 1 is comparatively easier than the section 2. And if you get a full score, like if you score well in section 1, or like if you get a perfect score in section 1, your score increases by 560 points. And like you get a score which contains more points than the score you get in the section 2. So basically, section 2 is quite tough. So how do I get the questions right in section 2? Like as you said before, like you need to come at those questions towards the end. And if in math also, you're left with two choices sometimes, okay, in certain cases, for statistical questions or for questions regarding this um, polynomials, the graphs one. So you're left with two choices sometimes. So how do I evaluate those two choices? Like how do I get the question right if I'm not able to get the if I'm not able to figure it out?
I think you shouldn't just be stuck on one question, because I missed out on one question on the practice test for the digital SAT on the Blue Book app, and still I managed to score 800. So
Yeah, I
it's
know.
not that you miss out on one question, so your score goes down drastically.
Yeah.
So just attempt as many as you can and just keep checking them, because most of the time they ask answers which are completely different from what you've calculated. Like the value of x is 7, but they'll ask 2x plus 10 or something like that.
Yes, I know that. I know that.
So that is a kind of tricky, I guess.
And is it recommendable to finish the math paper in like in 25 minutes and keep the rest 5 minutes for checking your work again and again?
Actually, I recommend that a lot, because mostly what in every practice test I've given, I've been able to finish the paper in a very short amount of time. So getting the rechecking time is very important, because math, as we all know, we make some silly mistakes. So you can
Yeah,
there are some questions which seem easy, and then there'll be one question like there was a question in the practice SAT which was they asked for less than, and if you find the answer as less than equal to, then you'll get the question wrong. So you should really read what they're asking for, and that's when the review time comes in, because when you review, you can catch such things in the question.
and I noticed there is one good thing for DSAT. They have this Desmos calculator where you can like plug in the equation and get the x and y coordinates or the vertex points or anything you want. So like, do you think like will it be useful in statistical questions to like evaluating questions regarding this uh regarding the dot points and all? The we have this standard deviation questions?
Standard deviation questions are quite rare, I would say, because I've only seen one or two in the practice tests. But a lot of them you don't use Desmos for that. You have to use logic for that in a lot of cases, because the ones I've come across were about which one has greater standard deviation or which one has such kind of questions. So in that you have to use more logic, or if necessary, there's only if necessary. Do not go directly to calculations. Do standard deviation only when it is completely necessary, and because it wastes a lot of time of
Yeah.
which you can use for other questions.
And according to you, what do you guys think? Which are the most toughest question types in for math?
I think like the quadratic equations, like you mentioned, because they get
Yeah.
pretty confusing.
Yep.
And the word problems are sometimes framed in such, like the percent problems in the ratio ones are worded in a
Yep.
kind of a way which we are not used to. So
Oh.
they might come off as difficult for some people.
Okay, so would you guys recommend, like, if I'm like reading a word problem and while reading the word problem, I'm supposed to form an equation, right? Like with respect to what's written in the word problem. So is it recommendable, or like should I read the whole problem and should I just like try to figure it out after that?
I don't get your question, because when you read the problem, when you're forming it, you are reading the problem itself. Right? Take it in parts if that's what you're asking. There's a lot of questions are divided into like segments, like this person earns twice as much as this person. So
Yeah.
like that, yeah, if that's what you're asking, then yeah, you should really form it in segmented bits rather than reading it full, because sometimes when you read it in full, you get too much information at one time.
Yeah.
So you end up making wrong equations a bit.
Okay, but like, while, in this question itself, as you said, um, we tend to make mistakes, like we tend to make silly mistakes in questions like this. We write the opposite thing and the answer is completely, it's gonna be some different value, obviously. So is it recommended to read the whole question first and then, figure it out in a slowly? Because I think I shouldn't say this, but we are Asians, so like we can, figure things out very easily in math especially. So is it recommended to, read the whole question and, form the equation in a steady manner? Because, I think it will be better.
I think it
I
all
think
comes down to which is more comfortable for you. So for me, at least, I prefer segmented questions because that's easier for me. That's how I've always learned math. So that it depends on your personal preference. I'll let her continue.
yeah, I agree with him, and I also think that for the math section, there's not much to worry about because
Yeah.
you get a lot of time to check your
Yes,
answers.
obviously.
Like I personally felt the verbal section was a bit less on time for me, so
Yeah.
I couldn't manage the time properly. But the math section is pretty much doable for us at least.
Okay. So, like, how did you guys manage to get a perfect score in math? So, like, did you guys like get any question wrong by any chance if you guys like went through your mistakes after getting the result?
I don't think they gave a question wise analysis, but
Yep.
even if we did make a mistake, it might have been one of the harder questions. And since they weigh less, so I'm pretty sure they ignored that and gave us perfect scores, even if we had made mistakes, which I doubt either of us did.
Because like through my analysis, I've seen that if you make a mistake in first question, your score decreases by 10 to 20 points. But if you make like at least two mistakes in the second section, your score doesn't decrease at all. And I guess that must have been the case in any circumstances for someone who got a perfect score, or maybe you didn't get any question wrong. That must be true as well. But like, yeah, I guess that's enough, I guess. Just a minute, let me check if I have any other questions. Yeah. Okay. Good. Thank you so much, guys.
You're welcome, and all the best for your city.
Yes.
All the
Thank you.
best.
Thank you.